Hello again, Rob Nulton with Hidden Screams Haunted Attraction here in Lewistown, Pennsylvania. Um, so today I thought we'd talk about something that I had mentioned in the previous video. That is storyline. So if you go to a haunted attraction, whether it's Hidden Screams, which we hope you come out and check out, or if it's something else, what we're hoping is that you can see exactly what we're trying to put together. Haunted attractions, when they put their show together, like I said, usually have one of two things going on. Usually it's going to be something like we do, which is your storyline. So you create characters, you create a story, whatever, based on a storyline. I'm more of the storyline kind of person only because I'm very creative. I like to write, I like to think, I like to make. And so it lets my creative juices really flow. And so, like I said, the storyline works a lot better for our attraction. So each attraction, like our first attraction, the second one, and the third into the fourth, all have a storyline that for themselves, but their storylines flow together. So it's not just the second thing, which is what I call organized chaos. Now, understand, please, I'm not saying that it's actual chaos. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But I call it organized chaos, meaning that it's organized in a fashion where an attraction might have a storyline itself. But then as soon as you exit that attraction and you go to attraction number 2, that one might be Western themed. And then you go to attraction number 3, and that one might be a cemetery themed one. And the first one might have been a scary manor or a broken, dilapidated manor. And they're each vastly different, and they do not connect together. And once again, that's more than fine. Each owner that operates a haunted attraction decides how they want to go with it, and that's their prerogative. They have every right to decide how they're going to do that. That's more than fine. Like I said, I honestly could not do what I call or deem organized chaos because it has to make sense for me. I have to be able to say, okay, this makes sense. And when I go to the next attraction, like, this also makes sense. If I can't start making sense of something, then it makes it really hard for me, and I tend to lose interest because now I'm trying to analyze, because I am an analyzer. And so if you're anything like me, when you start analyzing things, you start to lose focus on really what the actual point probably is, which at a haunted attraction, the point is to have fun and get scared. And so if I begin to analyze something, I can't get scared. I can't have fun because now I'm thinking, well, this doesn't make any sense. And then I get to the next part. I'm like, well, this doesn't make even any more sense. So it becomes a lot harder. So once again, I try to avoid that. Being that kind of a thinker, that analyzer, I really try to think of my other analyzers that might be out there and might show up and be like, okay, this might not be what I need to do, because I don't want anybody to overanalyze this and then be like, oh, I hated my experience because I had to analyze this. So that's the last thing that we really want, is to have that problem with any of our customers or patrons. I don't want them to come through and be like, oh, your show made no sense. And like I said, I will say this. A lot of that sense comes from, or starts, when you go to our website, okay? Our website's what sets the stage. That's the face of the attraction. That's the first thing most people should be seeing before they come here. And so when they see our Facebook page, if you take the time to read our backstory and get to know our characters, then when you come here and you live out the show itself, now you're truly able to see how the story fits and how each attraction fits in that storyline. And so that's the important part, is that you're able to now see that. So the only way you're going to be able to do that is, once again, by going to our website. So we make sure every year, or for every event we do, that the legend, the storyline, the characters are updated so that you have time to get to know us and what our theme is. And then you come here and you live it out and you're like, oh yeah, now that makes sense. I see what they're doing there. And that's the whole point. We want you to be able to do that, to understand that. So once again, I want to talk a little bit about that today. Not so much delve into the storyline of our show, but just to help you understand that concept, because depending on what attraction you go to, once again, comes to hidden screams. But no matter what attraction you go to, you're going to see one of the two. You're going to see either that organized chaos where you have differently themed attractions, vastly different from each other, that don't flow, which once again, that's fine and it works. But it works for them. It does not necessarily work for me in my mind, because of being an analyzer, I have to make things flow. I can't go from one to the other without analyzation. So for me, in my attraction, I have to make it flow so that way I know, like, hey, this is making sense. And when people read it and come here, they can follow the steps and say, yes, this all makes sense. So anyway, you'll see one of the two. The one I do, like I said, is storyline. And when you do storyline, obviously, this is something that takes time. I mean, it's not just a matter of sitting down and saying, okay, in this attraction, we're going to do Western. In this attraction, we're going to do Haunted Manor theme. In this attraction, we're going to do aliens. In this attraction, we're going to do vampires. It's not as simple as that. I sit down for a long time and have to work things out. And then I meet with our managers and staff and try to get input from them and thoughts, and then try to create characters. And it's a process. I mean, it's months and months and months of work, just as much as when we're doing build season, which, in another video I'll talk about. But I mean, we're meeting, regularly, trying to figure out, okay, what do we want to do? What characters do we want? What's the storyline? What's the theme? What's the goal? Because we want you to come to the show and be a part of it. It's interactive, and that's what we try to make you do, is live the show. And keep in mind, like, as a haunter, that's our goal, is to have you feel like you're a part of the show. It's not just like watching a horror movie where you're sitting down watching Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, and if you watch it so long, eventually your anxiety goes up because you start feeling like you're in the movie, and then you have to pull yourself out, sort of. This is a little more than that. You are actually walking it's like you're walking through the movie. It's almost like being a part of a play. That's pretty much what we do. We put on a play and you're walking around it. So if you ever think about something like that, when you think about what we do, we're almost like a performance company. Haunted attractions. I don't mean just us. I mean all haunted attractions. We are very much like a performance company. So instead of going to like a high school play and sitting there and enjoying a play, or going to a college level or even a professional level play, and you're sitting there and you're just enjoying the play, you are coming here and hopefully still enjoying the play, but you're watching it unfold around you and even becoming a part of the story itself. And that's something that a lot of people don't realize or recognize when they come to a haunted attraction. You are literally coming to a performance. Okay, you're coming to a play, essentially. But instead of just sitting back and watching other people act out a story based on another story that might have truth, or a fictional story that was written by someone else, we are creating this story, and we are training our actors to live it out. And then we're bringing you in, and you're walking among the show, and even sometimes participating in it. And so that really changes the dynamic of what we do. And a lot of people don't recognize that this is essentially what we are. We're a production company, pretty much, and we're putting on plays. It's just you're now walking among it, and you're not just sitting down and enjoying it from a seated position. You are walking and enjoying it. And that's why storyline matters, because if you're going to a play, I mean, once again, going back to that concept, if you're going to go to a play, and you have one scene that talks about, so-and-so came home from the war, okay? But then 2 minutes later, you're like, oh, and you just go off to a random thought. And it's like, oh, yeah, did you hear about the time when Uncle Johnny, decided to go to the park? I guarantee you go from literally having someone say, oh, yeah, I remember when Joe was off at war and this happened, and it's so good to have him back now. He's been gone for 2 years. Oh, but did you hear about the time Uncle Johnny went to the park? You go from that one thought process to that other. That's literally what that organized chaos is. And that's where it's like, oh my gosh, like, it's like, what happened? Like, did we just skip conversations and I didn't realize it? Did we move on and I wasn't told? And so that's why for me, storyline is so important. You got to start one thing and having a good end to it, and then move on, and it should flow. So if you're going to talk about Joe being at the war, you want to continue on. You want to go something like, well, yeah, I'm glad he's home. I'm glad he's back. It's good to have him home. We were worried about him. There were days we weren't sure that he would make it out alive, make it back home to us. But here he is, and he's alive again. And it's just so good, because I remember Uncle Johnny, used to have the same. We used to have the same fears for him. He used to be overseas, and now he's been home for so long. And he seems to be a better person, and he really likes to go to the park a lot because it helps to calm him because of his war days. He maybe has that PTSD, and so going to the park is refreshing for him. And so I can only imagine what Joe must be going through now that he's returned. So hopefully with that little bit that I did, you can understand the concept where you can't just go from Joe to Johnny without explaining Joe's return from the war and why Johnny goes to the park. You can't just, switch gears without explaining that. And that's what I tried to do there, was just give you a random story just out of the blue, out of the air, and talk about Joe and coming home from the war. And then Johnny, how he used to, serve in the military and was overseas. And when he came home, going to the park helped calm him. And so now we're trying to understand what Joe must be going through and trying to figure out what might be his calming, thing. So like I said, that's why storyline does matter. And that's why we do it here. So that way, while you're walking through our attraction, while you're going through the manor and through our second newest attraction, which we'll be building soon, as well as the third and fourth attractions, at least while you're walking. So as I'm walking and you're walking, you're going through this thing thinking, okay, yes, you're getting scared. And maybe you're not thinking about the storyline because you're so enthralled by what's going on and your mind's more terrified. So the last thing you're really thinking about is our storyline. But at least hopefully you're not there thinking, oh my gosh, this thing doesn't make any sense. I just went from a Western themed, attraction to now aliens. And you're where is the connection here? Where do we go from riding horses to riding in UFOs? So once again, that storyline for us really does matter. And we just don't want you to analyze, because once you start analyzing, then you've forgotten why you're even here. You start not liking the show, you start really harshly judging it. So once again, that's why we're more storyline people. Now, those who do the organized, what I call organized chaos, not saying it's chaos, but just I call it that. But those who do that, but the majority, I have seen those that do not do it well, but there are the majority of those who do it well. They know how to do it. They know how to make one attraction over here and then give you time to separate yourself. So when you go to the other attraction, it's not it has to flow. It's this is this one, this is that one. It doesn't have to flow. But you have to have an area big enough to give yourself time to sort of walk from one attraction to the other. So for example, if I have the manor behind me, like I said, this is the walls of the backside of the manor. So if I come out of the manor, and obviously this is an open area right now, but let's just say this wasn't an attraction. Let's just say that the middle is just an open midway area. And so I'm walking from one attraction to the next to go to the next area, okay? You have to give your mind some time to sort of relax and have that ability to be okay, I need to come down a little bit and not worry about what that attraction was and try to link it to this one. It doesn't have to be linked. And so then by the time you get into this next attraction, which I'm entering now, you're okay, this is a different attraction. This is something else, something new, something totally different. And it's not a big deal. Okay. So once again, that's what changes everything up, is that you don't have to worry about it so much, And that's what, like I said, really, really matters, is that you don't have to really necessarily worry about what you're going to do. So like you said, you come through, you go through the attraction, you're oh my gosh, okay, what's going to happen? You're more worried about not getting scared too much, not having a heart attack or anything like that. You're just trying to make it out alive in one piece as bravely as you can in front of your friends. So like I said, then when you do that, then you're able to come out here and be okay, that was great. So those attractions who do that, like I said, the most that I've visited have done it successfully. I have been to attractions over a long period of time that I've seen that just do not do it successfully. Like I said, and it's because they are literally one big attraction. So let me give you an example. I won't name names because the attraction is no longer around, and I'm not that kind of person that judges other people, because once again, I'm not perfect and our show's not for everybody. I get that. But let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Years and years and years ago, I went to one attraction. It was, just one long attraction. And it was, you go from one scene to the next. It wasn't like it was separate attractions or even separate areas. It was just like one long attraction and the scenes. So it's like if I went right here, this scene would be an alien scene. And then you go another 10, 15 feet, and now you have a butcher scene. And then like you go another 10, 15 feet, and then you had a morgue. And then you go another 10, 15 feet, and you had an insane asylum. And then you went another 10 to 15 feet more, and like now you had a voodoo scene, and then you went, another 10 to 15 feet, and you had like, I don't know, a slaughter scene. So, and once again, I'm not saying these scenes are the scenes that were there. I'm throwing out scenes I can randomly think of in my mind, because I don't even remember all the scenes that were there. This was a long time ago. I mean, a long time ago. But I just remember that left a mark on me, because I was like, man, like every scene was so vastly different. And once again, as an analyzer or that kind of a thinker, I was like, oh my gosh, I just like, this is not making sense. It was like sensory overload for me, if that makes any sense. And I was just like, okay, this is not working. So then my ability to get scared or to even to jump scare me sort of like went away, because like, I was just like, okay, this is not making sense. It's no longer even scary. And that pretty much happened almost after the second or third scene. And I still probably had another 10 to 15 minutes to go of this attraction. So it was just sad, because like I said, this was an attraction that had potential. I mean, they had a great use of land. They had a great place. But it was so chaotic that it sent my mind into a sensory overload, and so I wasn't enjoying myself. I'm not saying it was terrible by any means. Please understand, they did some things right, but there was things I was just looking at like, oh my gosh, like I could never do this. Like this is making my brain hurt, so I can only imagine what other people might think. And so that's something that stuck with me, and it's not something I share with the public. I mean, I never, like I said, I would never talk nasty against another attraction publicly, anything like that. If there's anything I ever would know, like I can share with people privately if there's questions, but I'm not one to badmouth attractions. I don't believe in that, because we're all trying to do this the right way. And once again, anybody could judge me and be like, oh, he does this wrong. I mean, I'm not perfect either. And I'm not the best person. I'm not the go-to guy in the industry. But once again, as a haunter, these are things that are more easily able to be seen by someone that has experience in the industry versus a customer. Because like you said, another analyzer who's just a customer might still get confused by the fact that there's no storyline. But they're probably not going to be like, oh my gosh, like this bothers me. They might not be a sensory overload. It might just be like, hey, this is not my jam. There's no story, doesn't make sense. It's not that great. And they might think, oh, well, that's as far as it goes. But for me as a haunter, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I could never do this to my customers. And so, like I said, it's just, that was an instance or an experience that stuck with me. So when I started my own attraction in 2019 and started building it, I was like, okay, I decided then and there, I need to have a storyline. Like I need to make sure this is organized, that it's thought through, and that there's a purpose behind it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to do the best I can. And so that's why I try to deliver this kind of a show versus that chaos or that organized chaos that I had spoken about. And so, like I said, when you come out to Hidden Screams, that's something that you will notice. Once again, if you go to hiddenscreams.com and you read our legend, which our newest one's up there for the 2025 season, as well as the backstories for our characters and the Mad Clown Corps, you will then get to understand how the show operates, like what you're going to walk through, what you're going to see, heck, what you're going to experience. Because like I said, in our show, not only are you walking through and are you watching this play happen around you, but we do pull you into the show. We want you to feel that experience. Like I said, when you're sitting and watching a horror movie and you all of a sudden zone in so much that your anxiety level reaches an all-time high because you feel like you're right there with Freddy Krueger or Jason. Like you feel like you're right there in the movie with them. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is not real. I'm watching it. You have to sort of pull yourself back out and realize I'm watching it. I'm not in it. We want you to feel that same way. Like when you're walking through our attraction, you are able to feel that same way, that you're like, oh my gosh, this is real. This is actually happening. Like for example, if you meet my friend Frank here, that's what we call him anyway. He's from Distortions Unlimited. We love Distortions Unlimited. But Ed is the creator and owner of Distortions Unlimited. He makes some fantastic props and animatronics, and this is like I said, been a bucket list for me, is to have one of his pieces here. And thank heavens I went to Midwest Harness Convention a couple of years back, and he ended up showing up and brought a whole lot of stuff with him, and this guy was one of them. And I bought him for the floor show price, which is this is once again why we go to conventions and trade shows, because we can usually get them for just a little bit cheaper on the show floor if we purchase there. If we wait till after, then it's regular price. So it does make it worthwhile for us, whether you're a fan or a haunter, to attend these trade shows and these conventions, because once again, like I said in my previous video, conventions are awesome. They're a lot of fun. But if you want to get like some really cool stuff at a decent price, going to these conventions, you can get them a little bit cheaper than you would if you went online or waited until after, because like I said, they're going back up to their normal price. But if I can find it here, he did sign it for me, from Ed to the Hidden Screams team. So like I said, you can see sort of, here on his back to Rob, which is me. But then it says Hidden Screams. So once again, it was awesome that he personalized it. So this guy will never go anywhere. I joke with people when the time comes to retire in 20, 30 years, and if nobody decides to take over the attraction at that point and we have to shut down, because a lot of people will do that. There's attractions this year that throughout the country that are shutting down because they're retiring and nobody wants to take it over. So they either try to sell their attraction or just shut it down in general. But if the day comes and I have to shut down because I'm retiring and nobody's taking it over, that is the one piece out of everything I own here. That is the one thing that will stay with me. And heck, knowing my family, it'll probably go in my casket. So he might become a permanent fixture with me someday whenever I do pass, because that's the one piece I will definitely keep. I mean, I like a lot of things that I have here, but that is a definite keepsake for me, being more personalized from Ed himself. And like I said, he is a fantastic person. Ed from Distortions Unlimited. Look up his website. Like I said, he makes some crazy and impressive stuff. He has been around for a very, very long time. He knows what he's doing, and he is like the top person out there for what he does. And so, like I said, I am so glad I got that. I'd love to have more pieces. I'm hoping in the future to add some actual moving animatronics that he makes. So that's, once again, life goals there. But you got to start somewhere. And like I said, having him here, like I said, we lovingly deem him Frank, is what we call him. That's not what he's actually called. If you go on the website, you'll see he's actually, I have a different name. It's actually not even a name. It's more like what he is. But we lovingly call him Frank here. But anyway, that is like my favorite piece here. And like I said, I would never get rid of it, sell it. I mean, even if someone offered me $2 million, I'd be like, no, sorry. And I know that sounds crazy because, people would think, well, hey, $2 million is a lot of money. And, selling that thing for $2 million, I could go buy another one. Yes, I could. But like I said, that's the first one I ever got from Distortion Unlimited, signed and sealed, and I personally delivered it home on the top of my car, tied to the top of my car to get it home. So once again, there's nothing that can take that experience and that away. There's no amount of money. So once again, that's the one piece that will probably die with me, or come with me at least, when that time comes. But everything else here, when I retire, will most likely get sold, or if someone takes over, it's theirs. But this is the one guy or the one thing behind me that will come with me. But like I said, just finishing up here, we do the storyline. So especially for the attractions, like I said, each attraction has a storyline, but then it flows into the overall storyline or theme of our show, which is what we're trying to do. Like I said, you have your Manor storyline, which once again goes into the second attraction storyline, which then goes into the third attraction storyline, which then goes out that way into the fourth attraction storyline. So like I said, it's supposed to flow. That's the whole point of what we do, is to make it flow. And hopefully, like I said, if you go on our website at hiddenscreams.com, you can see how that works out between the overall legend, the attractions themselves, and then the characters, how it all breaks down. Now, I will warn you, yes, it is quite wordy because it's a story. You're reading it before you're living it. We want you to understand what you're going to be living when you're here. So yes, you probably don't want to do it 5 minutes before you come into the show because you won't have time to read probably more than the storyline itself, like the legend. But that's why we put it out now, so you have time to get acquainted with the storyline. Like I said, it's similar to a book. Now, we didn't write a book, so don't get scared. But like I said, we do give you the stories, and keep in mind, our characters are given those storylines, like those backstories. From there, they create the future, which is what we love to do here, is giving our actors the ability to take their backstory, which I create, and giving them the ability to then take it from this point on. The backstory just brings their character to life for that moment. They're the ones that continue the story. So I create the themes every year. They use their backstory to then propel them forward into the future shows. And we give them that little bit of autonomy so they can do that, so they can have fun with it, so they can enjoy it, so they can be able to make it their own. And believe it or not, in this industry, if you look up a lot of, if you go through Facebook enough, or if you start liking pages of haunted attractions on Facebook, you'll come to find a lot of people will turn their character into their real, I don't want to say real persona, but almost like their second persona. So like people will have like their own pages of their character. And so it's really neat to see people, especially our actors, take and evolve their characters, which once again, on another episode of Behind the Screams and Hidden Screams, we will talk about the character development, what goes into that, and how we do that. Once again, we are doing our best not to give you all the secrets because once again, then you'll have nothing to come for in October. But hopefully this is helping you to understand exactly how we operate here, what we do, and once again, gives you maybe a small 1% appreciation of what we put together for you. Because once again, it's not easy. It takes a lot of work, effort, time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears, mind you, to do this. And so once again, we want you to understand what it is we go through, what we do to bring you this awesome show, and the literal love that our staff has. Like I said, we are very blessed and very fortunate that we have a staff that comes back every year. Many haunted attractions do not have that. Many owners that I know, I'll talk to, and they'll share with me that, like, hey, we've had a hard time this year getting people to come back, or retaining the majority of their staff from year to year. Heck, I've had people that lost actors on the first night, and it's very unfortunate, and it's beyond their control. Nothing they did. It's just the actors not sometimes realizing the work we put in. People will come and say, oh, this looks like so much fun, but this isn't just like a 2 or 3 night play at a high school, okay? Or a couple night production, in a big city. This is 5, 6, sometimes 10 to 12 weekends. So you're talking, like I said, anywhere from a minimum of about 8 days to 20 some days that we're operating. Some are even more. And it's hours in a night. It's not even just like 1 hour of being on stage or 2 hours. We're operating from 3 to 7 or 8 hours every night. So almost the amount of a full-time, job, like an 8-hour day. So keep in mind, if you've already worked an 8-hour day from 8 a.m. to 3 or 4, and then you have an hour or 2 in between, and then you got to come and do that again for 2 or 3 days every week towards the end of the week when you hopefully are resting, that's a lot to be asking of people. So it is tiring. It's a lot of work. And especially our younger actors do not realize that amount of work that goes into it. I mean, and a lot of them don't know how to pace themselves. So they'll put their all into it in the first hour of the night, but then the last 2 or 3 hours, they're like exhausted because they have gone full bore versus you normally should be working your way up. And once again, that's another topic we'll be talking about to help those who might be interested in coming to act with us in the future. We want to give you an idea of really how do you pace yourself and what does it take to be an actor at a haunted attraction, specifically at Hidden Screams. So like I said, we want to educate the public on these things because once again, we have people that come, it sounds exciting, it sounds like fun, but then you get into it and you're like, man, this is a lot of work, which yes, it is. We are a haunted attraction. We're a for-profit group. So it's not like we are, not out there to get a profit. The profit goes towards the attraction, so we can bring you better sets, better designs, costumes, scenes, animatronics. Unfortunately, we can't just do it based on asking people, can you give us this stuff? Like, can you just hand us an animatronic? Like, that's not how the world works, unfortunately. So it does take money to make the world go round, which is unfortunate. But like I said, that money goes towards giving you a better show each and every time we open our doors. But like I said, actors just don't know how to pace themselves all the time. Whether they're younger or even older, they just don't realize that you have to pace. You can't just come in full bore and then expect to continue that same energy level for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. It's a lot. So like I said, in another episode, we will talk about, how to be an actor, how to pace yourself, so you can go, do this all night long without having to be so tired that you're like, I can't do this. Like, it's impossible. Because like I said, actors will end up leaving in the middle of a show. And we've had it happen too, just because they're not pacing. They're not realizing what goes into it. And they exhaust themselves and they end up just leaving. And sometimes without our knowledge. And it's like, you can't do that. Like, you need to be talking to us, like, before you just up and leave. Because it's a hole we have to fill now. So once again, a lot of challenges we face as haunt owners, which once again, another topic for another day. The challenges of being a haunt owner or having a haunted attraction. There are a number of them. And it's not something that is easy to overcome, but we do. And I'm very grateful for the team I have that helps me on a regular basis to overcome them, between, like I said, my other co-owners, my management, my staff, and even my actors. It really does take a family to operate this thing, and that's what we call ourselves, a haunt family. Heck, my own family works here. My kids are actors here. My wife's one of our managers. So is my mother. She manages and runs our ticket booth. And then everybody else has become like an adopted part of our family. It really has become that way. Like, many of them are like brothers and sisters to me, and like a family, and so it's awesome to have built that relationship with people and to have them come back year after year and see the vision and see what this really can do, not only for the community, but for a lot of people and the good it's provided. And so that's what we're trying to provide insight for, is that this really does provide a lot of good, and relieves a lot of stress, and really does bring people together in a safe place, in a place that they can come and be themselves and not have to worry about judgment from others. And so we love that here, that people feel safe and wanted and belonging. And that's important in a crazy world that we live in today, where there's so many things that are tearing us apart and separating us as human beings. I think we need more stuff out there that's bringing us together. No, once again, not to get political, because I hate getting on that end of things. I think it's ridiculous anymore. I used to want to help the world in that way, and I was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm done with everybody, trying to undercut you to make themselves better. It just gets ridiculous, and I get tired of the back and forth. He said, she said, or you should do this, or we should do that, or we believe this, or don't believe this. And at the end of the day, it's like it's the same bird, just a different wing or a different feather. So anyway, not to get political, but like I said, haunts become a very safe place for people all over the world. Not like I said, just in any way. I mean, from kids to adults. I've heard the stories, just not just at Hidden Screams, but at other attractions, and I have definitely heard them here firsthand, and that makes you feel good. It makes you feel like, hey, like you're having a small impact on a small corner of the world. And granted, I might not be helping thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people, but to help the ones I'm helping, at least, and it might not just be, I'm not saying it's me, it's the haunt being here and the philosophy that we have here. But it's nice to hear that, because it makes you feel like, hey, I must be doing something right. And that makes you feel good, knowing that, okay, you have built something that is helping these people. And if it's helping them, then it's like, okay, it gives you that fire to continue. Because I'll tell you what, there are days where it's hard to go on as a haunt owner. I think if you talk to anybody, many of us have definitely thought of, like, is this worth it? Do we want to really actually do this? Is this something I want to do? And that's a hard decision sometimes. I mean, whether you have a good season or a bad season, it's not an easy decision to make. You sometimes get down the dumps. If you think as haunt owners we're always happy, we don't go through our times of depression or anxiety, I would tell you right now you're wrong. We have our bouts too. Now, it may not be all the time or as great as many others, but we do face some things. We do face some real struggles. And there's times where it's like you feel like you want to give up. You feel like you're done. You feel like, hey, I can't do this. And then you hear the stories, of people who were positively affected or impacted by what you're doing. And then you start to realize, like, okay, maybe you do have a reason to fight a little bit harder. Especially whenever, like, you want to give up, when you want to be like, I'm done. Like, what am I fighting for? Why do I have this place? Why do I spend time, money, energy, blood, sweat, tears on a place that, does anybody really care about? And to know at the end of the day that there are people that come through these doors as a customer or even as a staff member. And you hear people that say, like, hey, this place has changed my life. And that's like, it's weird to hear that, because you're like, really? Like, it just, it blows and boggles your mind. You're like, really? This place changed your life? And to hear those stories, it just makes you feel like, okay, well, if that is true, then I have a reason to continue pushing forward and trying to make this thing grow and be better each and every time. And once again, this all may sound corny, but it's nice that when you're able to provide that safe place for somebody and you have those same people, share that with you. It's very touching, heartwarming. And it does give you that reason to fight a little bit harder, where normally I wouldn't have that reason to fight. And so, like I said, we have our hard times too. We struggle. It doesn't matter how successful you are or unsuccessful. That thought still trespasses your mind. Like, is this really all worth it? Now, it might not be the same for all of us, but it does trespass the mind once in a while. And so it's nice that you hear those stories, whether it's from a customer that says, hey, we're glad you're here. This has really been awesome to have here, and we hope you stay for a long time. Or the staff member, the manager, the actor that comes up to you and says, hey, like, this really has impacted my life, and here's how. And when you hear that, it's like, it's just reaffirming, like, wow, I didn't realize it's having that impact. I didn't, I didn't know this place was having that kind of impact until I had people come up and tell me, like, hey. And so, not that I need people to do that, but it's nice when you hear that, because then it's like, okay, this place is worth it at the end of the day. So like I said, that's why I want you to all to see and understand is that this is so much more than just a haunted attraction. Like I said, we have other plans in the future of things that we want to do, which I'm not going to talk about just yet because they're not finite and we're still trying to figure out the logistics of making these things happen. But we have other events and plans of other things that are even just as exciting, that'll be more year round and so much fun that we want to bring to this area and for our community. But like I said, we are trying to figure out the logistics of everything because it does take time and money, and that's something that, we have to build up. But like I said, we have some future plans, and we're hoping to announce them at some point in the future of things we want to do. But like I said, we want to be that place that people can come and have fun, let out their stresses, their cares, and have a safe place to enjoy themselves and be themselves. I think that's what it comes down to. So like I said, I share that because, a lot of people just aren't aware of that, just like I wasn't as an owner, of the impact this place had on certain people. And so, like I said, it does make it worthwhile, at least for us, to continue to operate. So once again, not to get off track a little bit, but I just wanted to end with that, just sort of give you an idea of, once again, we'll talk about struggles in another episode where, so you can understand, like, hey, like, it's not like, once again, I keep saying it, but I'm probably going to say it a lot. We don't just turn this light on and all of a sudden, bam, everything's ready to go. Like, I wish I could turn the light on and this whole place would clean itself. If I, instead I gotta be here and work on this. And I'm grateful, once again, I had one of my managers here and our chief engineer was here, helped me this morning, Weston and Xander. So I'm grateful for them coming this morning and helping me out to get this place, a little bit cleaner, a little bit more organized, which was really nice. But like I said, now I've got to continue that work here. And I wish I could just turn the light off and back on and then bam, this would all just go away. But that's not how it works. So like I said, I gotta get to work. I'm going to work on that. Try to get this place cleaned up. But like I said, I sort of wish I could also turn it back on and off on July 20th and this place would build itself. But we haven't figured that out in this life yet. Maybe in 23 more years, we'll figure that out. But for now, we've got to do the heavy lifting and the hard work, which, like I said, believe it or not, we really do enjoy. Even though it's tiring, we do enjoy it because it allows us to see our creative work come to life. So I hope that doesn't really come to pass in 20, 30 years because I think that would take the joy out of things. But nonetheless, hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Behind the Screams at Hidden Screams. Hopefully you learned something. And like I said, please follow us, subscribe, our social media channels. We'd love to have you follow us. Once again, please come out to our events. If you have questions, concerns, please send us an email at hiddenscreams@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. It'd be, like I said, if you have questions, concerns, or anything you want us to talk about, please let us know. All right. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next episode and have a great day.